Good morning. It's Thursday, February 6th. A little cold out there this morning, and so I hope everybody's staying warm. We're going to spend some time this morning with Three Squares Vermont. It's their Awareness Day. Is Johanna Doran, would you like to start out?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having us today. Good to see you all again. So for the record, my name is Joanna Doran. I live in Winooski, and I'm the Local Food Access Director with NOFA Vermont. We're the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont. Thank you again for having us all here to speak today. So I'm very excited to be here to talk with the Senate Agriculture Committee about the many ways that SNAP, and also known as Three Squares Vermont, and complementary food security programs work together to meet the needs of Vermonters and to support our vital farming community. We are here today with our partners and neighbors for Three Squares Vermont Awareness Day to ask for your support on several requests that together will move us closer to a food secure Vermont and also ensures that farmers thrive. So we're asking for you to support $500,000 in base funding to strengthen NOFA Vermont's farm viability and food security programs, Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share. Pass legislation to instruct the state to opt into the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program and appropriate $75,000 to cover restaurant startup costs and $100,000 for a staff person within DCF to administer the program. Support the request for $5 million in base and one-time funding in the FY26 budget for the Vermont Food Bank to be prepared when disasters strike our neighbors in towns across Vermont, to purchase and distribute food, and support the network of community-based food shelves in meal sites. And finally, support V4A's request for an additional $2 million in base general funding for home-delivered meals for older Vermonters, Meals on Wheels, including the option to draw down additional matching funds through the Global Commitment Investment. So first, I want to share some background on SNAP and how it impacts Vermonters and farmers. The federal program is known as SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and is called Three Squares Vermont in Vermont. It is intended to help people buy the groceries that they need and want. This program is administered by the Department of Children and Families in the Economic Services Division of the Agency of Human Services. In Vermont, people can earn up to 185% of the federal poverty line to qualify for SNAP benefits. This, for a family of four, this means a monthly earning of $4,810 or an annual earning of roughly $57,000 a year. So that's, again, for a four-person household. Benefit levels are scaled based on income and monthly expenses, and the minimum amount that a household might get is as low as $1. Three Squares. Yeah.
They will send them one. How does that work? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yes, their benefits in their account would be loaded with $1 per month at minimum.
Thanks.
Yes, good question.
Yeah.
Three Squares Vermont comes on an EBT card that works just like a debit card that people can use at grocery stores and other authorized retailers. There are a lot of farmers markets, over 40 in the state, that are authorized to accept SNAP benefits, and farms that can accept SNAP benefits at their farm stands and for CSA payments as well. Each month, Three Squares Vermont keeps roughly $13 million in the state economy. This supports our local farmers, growers, businesses, and entire community. In the first half of this fiscal year, at least $130,000 of Three Squares Vermont has been spent at farmers markets alone. At NOFA, we work to maximize the amount of Three Squares Vermont dollars that are spent at local farmers through farmers markets and farm stands and CSAs. NOFA Vermont's food security programs like Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share help to extend the impact of this program by providing an additional incentive for people to spend their benefits at farmers markets and with their local farmers. Vermont's food security depends on a viable agricultural sector, and these programs provide vital income for our farmers while supporting our low-income Vermonters. In Vermont, about 65,000 people, or nearly 40,000 households, receive SNAP benefits. While Three Squares Vermont effectively reaches the most low-income folks in Vermont, we know that the program only reaches about 40% of potentially eligible Vermonters, according to census income data, for a variety of reasons. Since the end of the pandemic government support, the number of people at risk of hunger is rising every year. While Three Squares Vermont is our most effective anti-hunger program, the monthly benefits, as we just discussed, are often not enough for many, and for others, the program itself is simply out of reach. The cutoff for SNAP income eligibility is so low, again, 185% of the federal poverty line, so that a lot of people, especially in a high cost of living state like Vermont, just aren't able to afford food even if they're not eligible for the program. So Three Squares Vermont is just one part of the safety net, and it can't operate alone. We need to make sure that every part of the safety net is strong, including NOFA Vermont's local food access programs, the Vermont Food Bank programs, and meal programs for older adults. You'll hear today from farmers market leaders, a farmer, or a couple farmers, and a community member with inspiring stories about how these programs have impacted their lives. The real message that we want to convey to you today is that together we can work to ensure that everyone in Vermont at all times has the food that they need to thrive. Legislators like yourselves have a critical role to play in making policy decisions that ensure food security for all and support people and farmers in Vermont recovering from the crises of record high inflation, catastrophic flooding, and the end to government pandemic support. When the state of Vermont invests in meaningful support for food security, the positive impacts are felt across the state. These are policy choices in front of you this year that can support food security and for all who live here and support our local farmers. So the actions, again, that you can take are to support NOFA's request for $500,000 to support Farm Share and Crop Cash, pass legislation to instruct the state to opt into the restaurant meals program. Ooh, my throat is going very dry. Support $5 million for the Vermont Food Bank. Thank you. And support V4A's request for $2 million to support Meals on Wheels. I'm going to pass it off to Haley now. This is great timing.
Just a few questions. Yep.
Yes,
Go ahead, Senator.
So in my district, guys, we have the Norwich Farmers Market, and I had the opportunity to tour it this summer, and that was what they stressed, this program, because it for those people that are on the on SNAP, and they are able to get more for their particular dollar, and that was probably the key thing for me. And so I am all in on that. What do you see as some of the stumbling blocks with the program, one, and two? Do all of the people that are on this assistance, how are they getting this information so they can support those farmers markets?
Great questions, and thank you so much for your support of the programs. So some stumbling blocks, I would say. The federal funding that we receive for the Crop Cash program is limited to just produce, and so that is why we piloted the Crop Cash Plus program in 2023. and we're hoping to bring it back, so that people can get extra funds to supplement their SNAP or Three Squares Vermont dollars and be able to purchase any product that they want. So they're not just confined to produce. They can buy eggs and meat and dairy to supplement their full diet of needs. That also supports our farmers that are producing those products as well. And the way that we distribute information is through a network of partners, some that you see in the room today. We work with partners at the food bank. We work with partners that are working directly with people that receive Three Squares Vermont benefits. And we do some mailings with the Department of Children and Families for folks that are getting new EBT cards. They might get a mailer about Crop Cash as well, so that they know about the program.
And just one more, the one thing with the Norwich, which was vitally important for them, is transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And worked with, in that area, Advanced Transit to make sure that the bus service is going on. Have we reached out to local transit agencies to find out if during the time that the farmers market is open, that they can access, the people that can access the transportation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Transportation, especially in Vermont, is a major barrier to food access for many folks. It's kind of on a case-by-case basis for farmers markets. The Brattleboro market has worked with their local transportation system mover to have a bus that will bring folks to the farmers market. And then other markets have also worked with some of their local transportation systems to, maybe take folks from a senior center or a senior living community to the market. I'm not sure where Norwich Farmers Market is on that.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, great.
They do.
That's really great to hear.
The Three Squares, how do people apply? Didn't know if we.
That's a good question. So there are others that will be able to answer that better than me.
Okay.
There is a pretty comprehensive application process through which folks have to provide a lot of information about their income and expenses. And they apply with often with the help of folks from the Vermont Food Bank. But I will maybe let John respond to that a little bit more later.
Okay, well, yep. And,
No, I'm good.
and you're talking about collaboration, when Senator Major asked, are all the food agencies collaborating with one another to plug the holes as far as where one might not get to or whatever? Do you guys communicate with that? Because again, new committee, we apologize for that, but there's a lot of, not enough of you, but there's a lot of you that are coming in and, wanting to testify and all that. So do you guys collaborate back and forth?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We are a very collaborative state. We have multiple networks of communication between different food programs. And that's a really important component of the food security roadmap to 2035 is really ingrained communication in times of emergency so that we know what the gaps are and can work with each other to fill them. And then also in times of just regular business as usual so that, again, we know what the gaps are, we know we're not duplicating, and we are filling different needs in the community. So,
well, and I think you said the right word that I was looking for, which is duplicate, because when the dollars are sparse, like I think we might see this year, to be plowing the same field over again when, if you can just have better collaboration together, that'd be great.
mm-hmm.
And I'll leave it to other senators, but the last question of the $7.68 million that you had requested in your first, paragraphs or so, how much of that is new money?
I really can only speak to NOFA's requests for sure, and we'll have to get back to you on the other ones. NOFA's request is building off of a one-time allocation from last session. We received $300,000 in one-time funding, and we're requesting $500,000 in base
That's
funding.
what I thought, yeah. Okay, please.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, number 1 and number 2 at the end of your presentation. Is the governor's recommend, what is in the governor's recommend of that? Do you know?
As far as we can tell, it does not seem that the governor's recommended budget has funding set aside for NOFA's requests. And again, I'm not 100% sure about the restaurant meals program. I will have to get back to you on that.
And I have, and maybe somebody else will answer this, but we know the answer to this, but for anybody that's watching at home and for the emails that I'm getting all over the place, there are people watching from home, which is surprising. Tell us in your own words, or tell them in your own words, what the $75,000 does for the restaurant programs, because I think there's some misconceptions that people are just going out there and spending on the dime. Tell us why that program would be needed.
That is a great question, and I will pass that one to John.
Okay, yep, sounds good, yep. So if you're good and somebody else wants to come up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
To Haley.
Morning.
Morning.
Thanks, Joanna. My name is Haley. I live in Craftsbury. I manage the Hardwick Farmers Market, and I also work at the Center for an Agricultural Economy based in Hardwick, which is a nonprofit. This is my second year testifying here at the Senate Ag Committee, and I appreciate this opportunity, so thank you.
You have to give her last name as well for the.
Yeah, just,
Oh, sorry, Haley Williams.
yeah, sounds good.
I'm the local food coordinator at the Center for an Agricultural Economy, which I may refer to as CAE now from now on. I'm here to ask you to support NOFA's request for $500,000 in base funding to strengthen Vermont's farm viability and address food security by sustaining the 2 proven programs previously mentioned, Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share. The CAE does work in nearly every part of the agricultural sector, including farm and food business advising, food processing, aggregation, distribution, and a lot of work around food access initiatives. My role at CAE, as I mentioned, includes managing the Hardwick Farmers Market. In 2024 was my 3rd year in that role. I currently am a member of the Vermont Farmers Market Association board, which means that I regularly hear both the troubles and the successes of our state's farmers markets. What I hope to emphasize with you all today is that many markets in Vermont experienced a significant drop in sales between 2023 and 2024, but that was not the case for Hardwick, and I want to share with you why. In 2023, Crop Cash Plus, previously mentioned, expanded the purchasing power of EBT benefits to include foods other than just fruits, veggies, herbs, seeds, and plant starts. Customers were able to purchase meat, maple, bread, eggs, jam, and any other food item for human consumption. Due to lack of funding, that program was discontinued in 2024, and as I previously mentioned, nearly all markets around the state, including Montpelier, experienced a significant dip in attendance and subsequently a loss of sales for their agricultural vendors. This past year, the CAE generously supported the Hardwick Farmers Market with funding to create our own version of Crop Cash Plus, which we called Hardwick Farmers Market Bucks. These were $5 vouchers that were distributed in match to customers who chose to spend their benefits with our market. In 2022, my first year managing the market, our gross sales for all vendors was just under $70,000. In 2023, that number jumped to $95,000, a jump of $25,000, largely due to the addition of Crop Cash Plus. In 2024, this past season, we grossed over $108,000, this time thanks to Hardwick Farmers Market Bucks. That's about a 40% increase between 22 and 24. Funding for Crop Cash Plus or Hardwick Farmers Market Bucks not only expands the purchasing power of EBT, it also directly benefits our farmers with increased sales at farmers markets all across the state. Farmers markets in Vermont provide multiple benefits for the community. They're often the first place where new and beginning farmers can sell produce, establish their businesses, and connect with their customer base. It's vital that Crop Cash Plus is supported on a statewide level so that all SNAP participants and farmers market vendors can benefit from it. Farmers markets also foster regular community connections through food, regular gathering, and celebration of our agricultural history. I hope this example demonstrates the importance of both farmers markets in Vermont and initiatives like Crop Cash Plus so that they can continue to support both Vermont's agricultural sector and our neighbors who rely on these critical programs to feed their families. Please support NOFA Vermont's request for $500,000 in base funding to strengthen Vermont's farm viability and address food security by sustaining these two programs. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Questions? Yes.
So Haley, thanks for coming in. We had John Ramsey in earlier in the session. Does CAE intend on that $5 vendor coupon again? Do you know?
It's a great question. We are really fortunate to partner as deeply as we do with CAE, despite the market being a separate nonprofit.
Yep.
My understanding, based on a grant that we received word of in the fall, having applied this previous spring, is that we will be able to continue that, but it's a federal USDA grant.
Okay. Thank you.
That was gonna be my question. So that $5 was covered by the USD grant.
It will be in the 2025 season. In 2024, it was CAE's funding pool that supported the market financially.
I missed that.
It was talk about filling the gap, or if I may
Well, please, yes.
aside a little.
There's any of those questions that we put out there, if everybody wants to add to that,
Sure.
please just put in your take on that. Again, we're collaborative, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
Well, and that's the point I'd like to speak to, which is that arriving today, I have to say, I've worked very closely with Joanne in multiple ways through NOFA Vermont, primarily, including a Women and Center for Women in Enterprise and the CAE project that NOFA was a part of. They helped us become paired with a mentor. This was when I was farming, I should say, to have vended at 3 different markets in the state for a number of years. Kaylee was my mentor, and Stoney was actually in the class. So yeah, the collaborations, I think, run really deeply. We all see the benefit of each other's work, and yeah, that's why I feel so strongly about these initiatives in particular.
Anything else? Yes.
This time of year, there's not much going on as far as farmer's market, but is there a market and are there people to supply it this time of year?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Hardwick has a really wonderful regular community, which is why our EBT program in particular has grown so much. We live in a really rural, pretty under-resourced corner of the, we're kind of in the kingdom, we're kind of not. We will be having our first winter market this Saturday, in fact, with the hopes of allowing these programs to increase direct buying purchasing, direct buying for the folks that not just receive benefits, but the community at large. I know that for a lot of larger markets around the state, there are year-round options for local purchasing through their farmers markets, and because the SNAP authorization is a pretty specific, not as Joanna mentioned, there's a long process to become an authorized. The language isn't coming to me, an authorized representative. Something like that, exactly. So yeah, I think that the more that we can encourage those support farmers markets in general so that they can become an outlet for markets, and not just for the May to October traditional season, but year round. In our corner of the world, there are a lot of other winter, there's a Thanksgiving market and a Christmas market for multiple towns in our area. So being as rural as we are, I think it's also important to make sure it's collaborative, not competitive, and to create as many opportunities as possible to do that direct purchasing.
Thank you.
Well, the last name of Williams from Hardwick. You must know something about Christmas trees.
Believe it or not, I don't. I grew up in Montgomery, a little farther north. I do live very close to 2 significant Christmas tree operations.
With that. Yeah. I also want to put a shout out to Hardwick for all of us, for everybody that's listening as well. For a lot of years, Hardwick, and it's still a ways to go, but it was just one of those little towns that you drove through with dilapidated buildings and a lot of stuff. And there's been a 30-year effort to really make things happen. And it doesn't happen without community. I think one of the greatest things that they did when they were still very controversial was that Hardwick, in the middle of Siberia, put in a cell tower, and that started the communications, and that started people, because I would drive out of that area and there was just nowhere to do anything. I have done more real estate deals sitting in parking lots in Hardwick, because you come out of these areas where there's nothing. And then you get there and it's almost like a beacon of light. And then there's been investment that comes in, and then you have groups like John Ramsey comes in, and then you have people like Haley Williams that come in. And it takes a community to build community. It takes people. So, well, good job up there. Keep doing with what you're doing, and thank you.
Yeah.
Who'd like to be next? Come on up. Morning.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing my perspective today. My name is Stony Thompson, and I'm a vegetable, fruit, and nut grower on a total of 5.5 acres of leased land in Huntington. I urge you to support NOFA's $500,000 request for Crop Cash Plus, and the NOFA Vermont Farm Share Program as a proven, common sense, win-win way to support both farmers and families in Vermont. Up to now, my farm, New Tradition Farm, has sold produce to customers at the Richmond Farmers Market, the Burlington Farmers Market, a CSA, the Williston Food Shelf, a farm stand, as well as several other wholesale accounts. I'm proud to say that 2025 will be New Tradition Farm's 5th season in production. I say that I'm proud because to say that it hasn't been easy to make it to this point in building an economically and ecologically viable farm business would be an egregious understatement. To be blunt, there have been seasons where I have stayed in business by the skin of my teeth. The Crop Cash program and NOFA's Farm Share program have been essential sources of income for my farm during these startup years. And I know that these programs have been equally essential sources of food for my customers who enroll in them. I became a farmer because I'm passionate about feeding my neighbors and stewarding the earth in an ecologically responsible way. I believe that we all deserve fresh, healthy food that nourishes us, and I know for a fact that we can grow such food in a way that protects and even enhances the vitality of the ecosystem that we are enmeshed in. I also come from a long line of small business owners whose relentless grit, hustle, and community-mindedness strengthened their local economies and wove a strong and resilient social fabric. I started my farm with the desire to carry forward that tradition of honest work, community-mindedness, and mutual flourishing. However, it didn't take me long to realize that if I wanted to stay in business as a farmer who prioritizes long-term soil health and ecological well-being, as well as a fair wage to my employee, I would have to charge prices that some of my neighbors cannot easily afford, especially at a time when so many of us are already struggling to make ends meet with housing costs, healthcare costs, and the widespread inflation we've experienced over the last several years. This is a disheartening realization because at a time when we are facing various ecological crises and losing enormous amounts of topsoil to erosion and development nationwide, to neglect soil health and ecological well-being in the name of cost cutting is akin to robbing future generations of abundance and health. Yet if our neighbors can't afford our vegetables, we are in effect excluding them from that same abundance and health in the here and now. As I stated before, I became a farmer to steward the earth and feed my neighbors, not to sell a luxury good to only the most fortunate among us. The Crop Cash programs and the Farm Share program offer a win-win solution to this conundrum. In the case of Crop Cash, eaters see their SNAP money doubled and are able to enjoy top quality, fresh local vegetables, and farmers like me gain a whole new set of customers who otherwise likely would not be customers or who would buy far less. During the 2022 and 2023 seasons in particular, when there was more funding for Crop Cash, I gained many new customers who were shopping at the farmers market for the first time. In the 2024 season, Crop Cash accounted for nearly 10% of my gross income. There have been days at the farmers market when Crop Cash accounted for nearly 25% of gross income. In a business where the margins are razor thin and cash flow is often a source of stress, this revenue is a lifeline. The Farm Share program has similarly been a boon to both my business and my customers. My customers receive a season's worth of vegetables for 25 to 75% of the normal price, and I receive payment at a critical time in the spring when I'm buying tools and supplies I need. A win-win scenario for all. There is so much demand for this program, in fact, that NOFA ran out of funding in early February last year. So my customers last year were not able to receive funding via that program. A strong agricultural economy has given Vermont its culture of resilience and neighborliness. At a time when there is much tearing neighbors apart, good food from local farms and farmers markets bring us together. For all these reasons, I urge you to support NOFA's request for $500,000 in base funding to strengthen Vermont farm viability and address food security by sustaining two proven programs, Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share. Thank you for hearing my perspective, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Where's your farm?
Huntington,
Huntington.
yeah,
Where in Huntington?
right on Main Road at Jubilee Farm. Sarah Jane Williamson is my landlord, and she's been there since the early 90s.
Okay.
Is it just you?
It's just me,
Yeah.
yeah. With one other employee.
Greenhouses.
Yeah, 2 greenhouses, and then I have a second site where I grow the fruit and nuts at the Huntington Open Women's Land on Salvis Road. You
Mhm.
know what that is? Yeah.
I do. I was up there this year.
Okay.
So how much acreage does it take to do what you do? I mean, just us. What are you farming? How many acres? Just curious.
Yeah, so the vegetables I intensively grow on 1 acre.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm growing. I specialize in salad crops, so it's kind of fast food
Yeah.
in vegetables.
Yeah.
Arugula is 21 to 25 days to maturity. Lettuce. Everything I grow is pretty quick turnaround. So on one bed, I could get 3, sometimes 4 crops in a season, successions in a season. So
In Huntington, that's saying.
it's one acre, but there's a lot going on in that 1 acre. It's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
quick turnaround.
Yeah. How are you distributing? Yourself? You just throw it in the back of the car and here we go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a little utility trailer. I load that up for the farmers market and
Just farmer's market?
farmers market, a CSA, which is the pay up front for a season of vegetables, and people pick that up on the farm or they come to the farmers market and then the farm stand. And I also sell to the Williston Food Shelf
Yeah.
and a few kind of chefs here and there,
Yeah.
and other farm stands, so call them together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Stoney, is Richmond and Burlington different days of the week? Or are you literally loading up, selling, and then moving the same day to the other market, or?
They're different days, but
Okay.
back to back. Richmond is Friday evening from 3 to 6,
Burlington
and then
Saturday.
Burlington Saturday morning, 9 to 9 to 2.
Yes, go ahead.
And you say your business is growing?
It's
Yeah.
growing, yeah.
And so your name, basically your name's getting out there and that's what's doing it, I would say.
Yeah, I think, Vermonters, my neighbors, in Richmond, Huntington, Burlington have been incredibly supportive. I couldn't ask for better customers.
So do you see yourself growing to another employee in the next 5 years or?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, my approach has been, I'm cautious. I'm averse to risk, averse to debt, averse to,
Well, you're in business.
kind
That's,
of, so,
part of it.
I'm cautious about taking big moves, but I do see myself growing.
One last question. What do you do during the winter? Like this time of year?
I usually take off-farm jobs. I worked at other farms. I've worked at
Such as dairy farms?
I've worked at Maple Wind Farm. Livestock, and then I worked at Montpelier Construction Company last winter. This winter I'm doing a lot of odd jobs.
Do you keep your greenhouses operating in the winter?
No, I see that as a
It's just for
potential-
early season, late season?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a potential area where I could grow, in the future, is kind of more on the shoulder seasons and perhaps through the winter, but.
So I'm gonna throw a question out there for everybody as they come up and for you as well. Are there any, farmers markets operating undercover in the wintertime in heated spaces?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one's 12 months a year. 12 months, yeah.
I think Shelburne, Burlington, Montpelier.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anything else?
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much.
Good name for a vegetable.
Who's next? Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Kaylee Boyle, and I'm here as the co-owner of Bread Seed Farm in Craftsbury, Vermont. And I am here to support NOFA Vermont's request for $500,000 in base funding to strengthen Vermont farm viability and address food security by sustaining two proven programs, Crop Cash Plus, and Farm Share. Crop Cash doubles 3 Squares Vermont SNAP benefits dollar for dollar for fruits, vegetables purchased at Vermont farmers markets. The Farm Share program has subsidized CSA shares for limited income Vermonters for the past 30 years, and the Farm Share program pays 25 to 75% of that CSA share cost. So I'm here today because my farm has benefited greatly from both of these programs. And yes, Bread Seed Farm is moving into our 5th year of production, just like Stony. And we are also a 1 acre no-till farm that grows vegetables, flowers, and herbs. And we're all going to direct markets in northern Vermont. We currently sell full-time at Montpelier, Stowe, and Waitsfield markets, along with offer a community-supported agriculture program closer to home in Craftsbury, Greensboro, and Hardwick. I wanted to come and testify today to let you know how important both Crop Cash and the Farm Share program are to our small businesses' viability. Without these programs, we could not have found the success we have at the farmers markets we attend, or have had the number of CSA share signups we've had, which are two important revenue streams for our business. More importantly, Crop Cash and Farm Share have allowed us to reach limited income members of our community who might otherwise not have been able to access our food. It's important to myself and my partner that our organic produce is accessible to everyone in the community, and it's these programs that take the burden off the farm and provide a mutually beneficial solution to both the farmer and the community member. In 2023, 20% of our sales at the capital city farmers markets were through Crop Cash purchases. So with more limited funding in 2024, our Crop Cash sales accounted for 5%. In 2023, Crop Cash represented $400 in extra sales per week. We're looking forward to Crop Cash being fully funded again and being able to double or even triple Crop Cash customers' purchases so they can come and purchase more fresh produce through the market. It was really through that extra income brought in from that program that we have been able to reinvest money back into our business, into staffing, and to continue to improve our systems so we can provide the highest quality vegetables to our customers. The Farm Share program has also allowed us to reach community members through CSA shares for half the cost. And it's through both Farm Share and Crop Cash that we're able to feed a greater part of our community with our nutrient-dense food. So I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom, and I've definitely surprised myself by being back living in a rural area and working in agriculture. I didn't always think this would be my trajectory when I was 18 years old. And while I didn't grow up on a farm, I grew up with a big garden and surrounded by families who made their living from the land. And it was after leaving Vermont and realizing how much I missed the landscape and the access to quality food that I found my way into working in farm-based education and food access at a nonprofit farm outside of Boston. And my partner and I, Doug, met at this farm, and it was there that we started dreaming of having a farm of our own. And it was through years of working and managing farms in Massachusetts for over a decade that we were able to find our land in Vermont and move closer back to my family and start a business of our own. And I really think, it takes a big leap to start your own business. And I really think the edge that we've been given these past 5 years has been through the support of these NOFA Vermont food access programs. The weekly extra income added a boost to our farmers market sales, and it's just something that has been hard to lose with it not being fully funded this past year. And I think if we want farm businesses to thrive in our state, where agriculture really is at the heart of communities, we need to continue to fund these food access programs. As a farm business owner, the most rewarding part of my job is connecting with and feeding my community. And with the availability of crop cash and the farm share program, my farm, along with other farms across the state, will continue to help Vermonters feed Vermonters. And that is why I'm here to support NOFA Vermont's request for $500,000 in the state budget for our food access programs. Thank you again for the opportunity, and happy to answer any questions.
Where's your farm in Craftsbury?
We're in East Craftsbury on South Albany Road.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Just curious, outside of Boston, I wasn't aware there were any farms outside of Boston unless you got quite a ways outside of Boston. Where were
I know.
those?
We were in Concord, Mass.
Oh,
which
okay. I
used
went to
to
high
be
school there.
quite the, oh, you did?
Yeah.
You think it used to have a lot more farmland
Yeah.
there. I think this was a town piece of land
Okay.
that was being used for agriculture.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you doing anything in the winter time, greenhouses or anything like that?
I know, it's interesting. Like Stony, I feel like it's where we see our biggest growth opportunity. So we turned the greenhouse on yesterday.
Oh,
And but yeah, things, so we've seeded things for microgreens and greens to transplant out. We are at the Montpelier Winter Farmers Market starting March 1st.
yeah. Well, you turned it on just for 10 below?
I know. We're creating a little germination chamber.
Yeah.
So we actually have things germinate in a day, which is pretty
Yeah.
exciting.
Wow.
How are you heating that?
Propane.
Yeah.
We would love to do incorporate wood fire. You know, it's how we're
That's
heating our
the-
home,
Right.
but a little harder to regulate the temperature.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, Kaylee, thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
you coming in. And John, are you next? Oh. How are you? Yeah.
Is it me? Okay, sorry. Thank you. We lost order.
No, I
My apologies.
apologize. No, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today as I speak with you. My name is Crystal Shannon Aloisi. I live in Brattleboro, and I am a participant in the SNAP and Crop Cash programs. I'm here today to ask you to support NOFA Vermont's request for $500,000 in base funding to strengthen Vermont farm viability and address food security by sustaining two proven programs, Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share. Without SNAP, I wouldn't have enough food. I especially wouldn't have enough food that is safe for me to eat with my disability. I'm a survivor of short bowel syndrome, which means that my body can no longer absorb nutrients effectively from food. So with my SNAP benefits, I'm able to visit the Brattleboro Farmers Market, which is in a heated indoor space. To answer one of the questions earlier, it's handicap accessible with handicap accessible bathrooms. And I was able to get fresh salad greens just this weekend. I'm able to visit the farmer's market and get additional money through Crop Cash to buy those salad greens. It is Crop Cash that provides me with the bioavailable maximum freshness, enzyme-rich local produce that lets me stay off IV nutrition. More subtly also, and very important psychologically on disability, Crop Cash affords me a way to participate in my community and the growth of my community. It lets me contribute to these wonderful little local farms that care enough to grow this stuff for me. One of the markets holds the greens if the weather keeps me from getting there on time. So I wouldn't be able to afford to help them in return by investing in them without the Crop Cash and the Crop Cash Plus. So that's why I'm asking you today to support NOFA Vermont's request for $500,000 in base funding to strengthen Vermont farm viability and address food security by sustaining the two programs we're talking about, Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Crystal. Questions? Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So before John comes up, because that's kind of a separate appropriations request, I'm still trying to wrap my head around where we were last year budget-wise, and I know I heard the figure 300,000 last year. So you're actually asking for an additional 200. But was that one-time money or was that base funding in the budget? So it was one time. So in essence, it is 500. That's not necessarily in the governor's budget now. Okay. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Crystal, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
John.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I'm John Sales. I'm CEO of the Vermont Food Bank, and I live in Montpelier. I think I said before, I can almost see my house right over there.
Yeah.
I did not walk down today.
Yeah.
If I would, I think I'm going to start by answering a couple of questions
Yeah,
that were thrown out there. First of all, I want to talk about collaboration, cooperation. One thing that's really unique about Vermont is we have a Three Squares working group. And it's not just the organizations like the Food Bank and Hunger Free Vermont. It is organizations from all over the state that touch the Three Squares program, and it's folks from the state, from the Department of Children and Families in the Three Squares program, and they meet regularly to talk about issues and coordinate and consolidate and make sure that there's no duplication. It is very unique across the country because folks go to national conferences and people are amazed that the advocate community and the vendor community and the state are all sitting down together regularly and working through problems. The restaurant meals program, you said you're getting questions about that. So
well, I think there might be misconceptions about, and I just want to make sure that, you know, if anybody's gonna make a decision on anything, let's get the facts right.
So, and my understanding of the restaurant meals program simply is it's not additional benefits. So these are folks who are already eligible for Three Squares Vermont and getting benefits. And if you're unhoused or over 60, and I think there's maybe one other category that I just can't remember right now, then you are permitted to use those benefits at approved prepared meal places. So like restaurants. In some states, it's largely chain restaurants that participate. The desire in Vermont is to have local restaurants. A lot of the folks during the pandemic that were part of the Everyone Eats Vermont program, some smaller restaurants are really interested in getting qualified to be able to provide those meals. It will also allow folks to purchase prepared foods from a place like a local grocery store. Because right now you're prohibited from using SNAP dollars for any kind of prepared meal. So if you go into your local grocery store, whether it's an independent or one of the chains, you can't buy a rotisserie chicken with your SNAP benefits. And so if you don't have a working stove, love to have a chicken, you can buy a raw chicken, but you can't buy a rotisserie chicken. So this would help those certain categories of folks who get SNAP benefits.
Yeah, and I think, again, John, you're touching upon what I wanted to get out there, because I asked the question with a hope of hearing it, in such a way as that there are people out there, whether they're in the hotel motel program, which we are supporting, there are people in shelters, there are people living in tents, there are people out there who do not have a kitchen to prepare food. And so I wanted to get away from the notion of, oh, well, these people are just out there fine dining and all of that. No, they're not. They're, as you've said, they're going to places that they don't have the ability to cook anything. They're buying prepared food so they can eat.
Right. And those those vendors have to be approved SNAP vendors. And someone was saying before, it's not an easy process to become an approved SNAP vendor. So you can't just walk into any restaurant and use your SNAP benefits to purchase prepared foods.
Thank you for that.
And also, Johanna had talked about the $1 minimum benefit. And she also talked about there's 40% of the folks who are eligible who aren't getting benefits. A lot of those folks are people on the lower end of the benefit. So people will just not bother going through the 18-page application, which really gets pretty deep into your financial situation. I'd actually encourage people to look at the application and think about what you would need to do to fill that out yourself. So a lot of the folks with say a $1 benefit wouldn't bother to participate in the program, but there may be folks who become SNAP eligible and are in the program because of participation in other programs. So while someone might not go through the process to apply for SNAP and get a $1 benefit, they may be getting other like fuel assistance that makes them eligible for SNAP categorical eligibility. And so they can get that SNAP benefit loaded onto their EBT card also. So there are some reasons, we would like to see the minimum benefit increased so that no one was getting less than say $100. But that's for another day. So as kind of the cleanup batter here, I'm going to do some repeating so that I make sure that the key elements are front of mind for you all. I just want to reiterate again the request, and this is from the Coalition for the Food Security Roadmap. I always like to have my roadmap with me. So pass legislation to instruct the state to opt into the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program, as we were just talking about. And that would be $75,000 in startup costs and $100,000 for a staff position, because we've realized there would need to be a staff position at DCF to administer the program. The $75,000 may be one-time dollars. As you've heard from our great witnesses today, we support $500,000 in base funding to strengthen family farms and food security by sustaining the NOFA Vermont Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share programs. Again, I think Vermont is a leader in the amount of these benefits that we actually use. We have such a strong farmers market community here. And also to support a request for $5 million in base and one-time funding for the Vermont Food Bank for disaster and responsive readiness to make sure we're ready for disasters, and to purchase and distribute food to folks in our communities and support the network of community-based food shelves and meal sites, which are in all of your towns. And then finally, an additional $2 million in base general funding for home delivered meals through the Meals on Wheels program. I think last year there was a base amount of $1 million for Meals on Wheels put in the budget, and we really need more to make sure that those meals are going out consistently. And as Johanna said in her introduction, Three Squares is just one part of the safety net, and it can't meet the need on its own, and it's not designed to do that. It's supplemental. I'm just here to help put together the different puzzle pieces for how we reach food security in Vermont. Many of our neighbors benefit from these critical programs. Sorry, I'm not used to reading my testimony.
You're fine, John.
So while many of the neighbors benefit from these critical programs, they do not meet the high sustained need for food access across Vermont. Folks are struggling, and you're hearing that from your constituents. Food comes to the Vermont Food Bank to redistribute in a number of ways. It comes through grocery retailer donations, community donations, federal food programs, and food purchase. And we've talked about all that before and how the food bank works. So we purchase food both from Vermont farms and from other sources. Why is that? Because the need for food access remains so high following COVID, inflation, floods, we just keep hitting with this cascade of disasters and economic shocks. Just, you know, inflation has come down some, but the prices haven't come down, right? They're just going up at a slower rate, which you all are aware of. You know, any one of these things that have been happening can be difficult for households to weather, but many of our neighbors have experienced multiple events, getting flooded out multiple times. Dr. Meredith Niles was here and she was here. She was in house. She's a researcher at UVM, has done some tremendous work around food security in Vermont. And I invite you to review her team's brief, which we can provide. And there's a link in my written testimony, just with the data and slicing and dicing. So the food bank estimates in 2024, we served an average of 72,000 people per month, both through our network partners and through our direct distribution programs. You know, some of our partners are here in the State House with us, and they will tell you many of the individuals that visit food shelves and meal sites and go to Veggie Van Goes also get 3 Squares Vermont. And as I said, it's designed to be a supplemental program and not provide all of the food for a family. There also, as was pointed out earlier, there are a lot of folks who are not eligible for 3 Squares Vermont at 185% of the federal poverty level, and yet still struggle to make those ends meet, right? It's not just about food, it's about all the expenses together. Food insecurity is simply financial insecurity, and people are making choices and trade-offs. We like to, at the food bank, make sure that there are opportunities for folks who aren't eligible for 3 Squares Vermont. That's why we like our Veggie Van Go program, which is really a no barrier, no questions asked, drive through, and you can actually pick up for families. We have people who come every week and pick up for 5 families in their neighborhoods because they're retired and they have the ability to do that and then distribute that food to folks who are probably out working and couldn't come at 10 o'clock in the morning to the school parking lot. And so it really is a neighbors helping neighbors program. Some folks visit occasionally, once a month or every other month, or when something's happening in their life. Some folks come every week because they're feeding their own neighbors and they need that additional help to make sure that they can feed their families. Some examples, we have farmers who are picking up produce for their workers on their farms. There was a man they had a multi-day power outage and their freezer thawed and they lost a bunch of their food and coming to fill up on meat. An older woman whose husband had passed away and her household income was cut in half because they weren't getting his benefits anymore. And her doctor recommended that she go to a Veggie Van Go from the hospital to make sure that she was getting enough vegetables in her diet. So everything works together, right? Everything works together. And just again, to emphasize the NOFA $500,000 base funding request, SNAP Restaurant Meals Program, the food bank's $5 million request, and $2 million for Meals on Wheels. I will say, I did some back of that envelope math, and all of any funding that had come to these organizations other than Meals on Wheels, the $1 million is base, was one-time money last year. So I think that entire $7.6 million is not in the governor's budget this year. And, we're always asking for base. We know that one-time money is going to help us through the next year, and we certainly appreciate that. But these are crucial programs, and getting them in the base budget is really a priority and a desire. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And just again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, thank you, John. Question on the one-time appropriations of $75,000, then you looking for $100,000 staff position. Well, what happens if you don't get the $75,000 the following year, what happens to that position?
I think the 75,000 is really startup costs. And so once, we get the person hired and we get all the materials and we get, they're gonna need technology and initial outreach to communities. Once that startup has happened, I think just maintaining that position will allow us to maintain the program.
And if you got the money but not the position money, would somebody still be able to run the program, or?
What we've been told by DCF is without a position, they cannot implement the program.
Anyone else? All set?
Good, and thanks again for just taking the time to hear from everyone in the community about the impact of Three Squares Vermont and for all the good work you do.
Thank you for backing it up and tying it all together. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you guys for coming in.
Committee, while we're waiting to set up we're running a little bit late for Ms. Lynch. Yep. So I just wanna, morning, how are you? Thank you for coming on. We're sorry we're running a little bit late, but we will make sure that we afford you all the time that you need.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Wonderful. Are we ready to get started, or do you need to transition?
Yeah. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Heidi.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for inviting me to meet with you all today. I had hoped to be there in person, but with the snowstorm, we're played it safe and stayed here in Rutland. So maybe next time we can be there in person. But I do have some slides to share with you all, just as an introduction to the Vermont Farmers Food Center here in Rutland, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And then I have a lot of information on the current campus expansion projects that we are in the midst of. So Linda, is it ready for me to go ahead and share my screen?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Great. So you all can see that all right?
We can,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, great. So, just to reintroduce myself, so my name is Heidi Lynch. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Farmers Food Center here in Rutland. We are one of the food hubs in the state. There's 6 of us now that are identifying as food hubs. We founded in 2012 here in Rutland, and in this photo here, we're standing. This is a group from our Winter Farmers Market standing in front of our building when we very first opened. Our mission as an organization is to relocalize the food system through increasing food access, education, and infrastructure. When we purchased our, sorry about that. When we purchased our campus back in 2012, it was a grassroots effort that was mobilized by a group of farmers who were looking to have a market during the wintertime so they could sell their products 52 weeks a year. That led to a search for locations in our downtown area that would both have enough space for the vendors and enough parking. We had one space early on, and it was so popular from the get-go that the group decided it was time to look for a space that we could own and grow into. So a 501c3 was formed. We did a feasibility study looking at various properties in our community, and our current campus where we are now is what rose to the top. It is a former industrial site right downtown Rutland. This is the main Farmers Hall here. You can see on our aerial map, that's where we've been operating out of since 2012. We launched our winter farmers market in there 6 months after acquiring the property. And the entire transformation of that original building was from donations from individual donors in the community, small grants, and a whole lot of pro bono services to help get the place renovated. Part of why this campus was selected was because we had all of these other buildings on site, and the vision was to eventually transform those other buildings into additional pieces of infrastructure to support the growth of the food system. So having processing and storage capacity, spaces for community food access programs. And again, it's all centrally located in downtown Rutland where there's parking, bus route, foot accessibility, all of those elements that really make it a civic space. We have a number of community programs that focus on that community food access piece. We have a pharmacy project, which is pharmacy with an F, so food is medicine. We purchase food from local farmers, and that food is prescribed by local healthcare providers to those members. So we're not only providing a new market access for small family farms in our area, but then also connecting people in our community whose health could benefit from having more access to fresh foods. And we also have an education program called Farm-Based Experiential Learning. There's a urban greenhouse right here on our campus. And this greenhouse, we have student groups that come from the Rutland City Public Schools and some alternative classes that come to the greenhouse and just get that experience of hands-on, seeing plants, seeing how they grow, getting into sort of a outside the classroom lab. And then in addition to those community programs, infrastructure, as I mentioned, was a major focus of our mission and what we're currently working on. I hear the train coming, so if you know where we are in Rutland, we're right on the train tracks. So I might have to pause for a minute when that comes closer.
No problem.
So just to share a little bit more of an update on what we've been working on currently. So as I mentioned, we formed in 2012. We really launched our anchor community programs around 2015. And then in 2019, we received a USDA planning grant to start to work on the business plan for the additional buildings on our campus to be renovated. So we did that business planning, market analysis, looked at the other food hubs, both in Vermont and neighboring regions to see their modeling, completed the business plan. And then in early 2020, we started to seek funding to do the infrastructure renovations to support that business plan. And given it was 2020, lots of exciting things happened at the same time, as we all know. So during the pandemic, we just became one of the resources for our community that we had to quickly prop up an online market so that producers still had outlets to sell their products when markets were shut down under stay home, stay safe order. We became the Everyone Eats hub for Rutland region. So we actually, ultimately, there was over $3 million that came through our hub, over 300,000 meals total. And at the height of distribution, we were doing 3,000 meals per week in our area. So we were quite, just again, that physical location of our hub made us essential during pandemic response. We also, when we founded as an organization, as I mentioned, it was 2012, that was coming off of the coattails of Hurricane Irene in our area, which was in 2011. And we really, at that time, the founders saw this need when we saw supply chains cut off, when we saw the need for a centralized drop location for FEMA and response resources. That was a big part of what was driving the vision at the time, that we needed this centralized food and civic center. So when we became the Everyone Eats hub 10 years later, it just once again reinforced that places like this existing where, from pandemic to natural disasters, having a centralized location that has physical infrastructure and is also a place where community, can gather and know that they can access resources. So the pandemic really for us, a lot of what our organization was founded on just became, acutely focused again of, yes, this is why we exist, and we can really be that adaptive facility in the community. So not a one size fits all, but sort of multiple uses depending on emerging needs, and making sure that food and farmers and that aspect of our well-being has a point of connection no matter the crisis. So as we started to get funding for our expansion project in 2020, one of the first steps, as you're aware, is the environmental remediation work is typically required with larger federal funding grants. So we secured, here's the list of grants that we secured. And we started when we did the environmental assessment. Given that this is a former industrial site, one of the first things we encountered was that we did have concerns that had to be addressed, and cleaned up. And so we've actually been on a 3-year process of doing remediation work. And unfortunately, the highest concern of it was a airborne toxin that's in the subsoil gas down here was actually in our Farmers Hall building, so our main space. So we had to close down the building. We've been working on a 3-year remediation process so that we can then begin the actual renovations projects. So that has been quite a challenge for us, but I'm happy to say here we are. The building is now back opened. We've been tremendously supported by the Agency of Commerce and Economic Development and community programming that provided the brownfields funding to do the cleanup, the engineers we've worked with. So that has just been a real success story here, that we, embarked on this renovation journey, found we had some contamination to clean up, and now we've succeeded in doing that. It took much longer, but I guess as far as remediation goes, we're told that's still pretty fast. So in the meantime, the rest of the environmental concerns on campus have been taken care of, but everything else was much more run-of-the-mill sort of asbestos, lead abatement, things like that. But the TCE gas has now been addressed. So we're not only improving infrastructure in the community, but making it healthier for everyone by dealing with those contaminants. So these are the awards that we currently have on hand. We have one pending award with the Resilient Food System Infrastructure funding. And then I'll just share a little bit more here about those renovations that we are working on. So this is our main building. Yep, go ahead.
Heidi,
Yes.
help us, and you're doing great, and help us understand your day-to-day operations about how it works there.
Sure. So we, as I mentioned, we run a number of food access programs. So we have staff that do that day to day, working with our pharmacy members, coordinating with local partners on all of the education programming. And then we have an online farmers market. So we work with schools, restaurants, small businesses, and then individual consumers who are able to purchase product online. We have a online platform, and then we do distribution every Wednesday. So the farmers deliver here, we pack and prepare the food that then either goes out through our distribution van to local work sites or schools, or the individual community members pick it up here. In addition to that, we work with the other food hubs in the state as a cross-dock location. So that means some of our partners sell products from Rutland County farmers to other areas of the state. And so Rutland County farmers are able to drop their products here, and then the vans and trucks from other food hubs are able to pick it up here at a centralized location, because often a barrier for producers is, though, for the other vans and trucks to go all the way out to, Wells or Danby is prohibitive. So by being able to drop off here where the vans can easily get, we're increasing market access for local producers. And additionally, if farmers have a product that they're selling through another hub, the hubs come to us directly and bring those products for their own distribution routes. So that's an element of what's going on here on a day-to-day basis. We have a weekly rotation, so a lot of this happens on a weekly basis, and then some additional days depending, especially during the summer season, things are more active. And then prior to our campus, our building being closed down, as I mentioned, so for the whole first era of our existence, for just under 10 years, this building that you see on the map here with the drawings, half of that building is the community space, so where the winter farmers market happens, where we did Everyone Eats distribution, where we had our pharmacy program, and then the other half of the space is actually incubator space for food-based businesses. So we have one large commercial kitchen where we had an anchor tenant, Sugar Bob's Finest Kind. He does value-added maple products. So he had an entire wing for his business that he did production in his kitchen. He had distribution because we have a loading dock that he was able to utilize. And then within Farmers Hall, we have another small kitchen that incubates smaller size businesses. So we had bakers, salsa and ketchup makers, some smaller size businesses that were able to produce their products in that space. So all of that was going on since since our early years, and then unfortunately it was all disrupted with this remediation process. So now that the building, we can use the building again because it's been remediated. Part of what we're doing is what is outlined on this slide is we're making upgrades to the whole space so that we can not only get producers back in there incubating their businesses, but we're going to have upgrades to the kitchens, to the storage spaces, and then we're actually renovating the entire thermal envelope. So again, if I don't know how many of you are familiar with our space, but this is a big old building. This particular one was one of our buildings on site has been here since the 1800s. This particular building was built between the 50s and 70s. Can't remember exactly, I think closer to the 50s. But so we're replacing the roof, we're doing insulation. So we're basically tightening the whole thermal envelope. We installed radiant heating in the floors because again, it's a big space to heat. So we've done a lot of energy efficiency assessment. We have a biomass boiler that's previously been in there, but that's getting upgraded as well. So just that our overall, we're really investing in the longevity of the facility and then obviously keeping our operating cost as manageable as possible as a nonprofit. So that's the current phase that we're in for renovation. This is just an overview here. So as I mentioned, remediation is completed. We're still having to do some ongoing testing to just make sure everything's operating as it's supposed to, which so far it is. And then we've started these renovations, as I mentioned, to the kitchen, the storage space, and overall efficiencies. And then here's a photo to answer your question. This is some more of just what it looks like on our day-to-day here. So we have community kitchen classes, both for youth and adults. This is the photo of the incubator kitchen space. That's the smaller kitchen that I mentioned for smaller food businesses. And then we have a large community event space. So often when the winter market isn't set up there in the winter, we have events during the summer and shoulder season. So it's been a wonderful asset to Rutland to have a central gathering space with plenty parking. And we've hosted a number of our own events as well as community partners and events as well. And that both the tenants that I mentioned to you, the food-based businesses and this event space are part of what makes up our income as a nonprofit. So having that rental revenue, events revenue is just part of the business model that helps us balance our revenue between grants and philanthropy and then these incomes, because running a whole big space certainly takes a diversity of resources. And then this building is the second phase of our expansion. So there's a post and beam structure at the back of our campus that we are transforming into a regional produce packing center. So this facility is going to not only provide increased infrastructure for farmers in the area that they'll grow more products to have available for sale if they had more storage space. By having it centrally located and shared use, it helps farmers from everybody building individual infrastructure on their farms and maintaining those costs to being able to pay a fee for service to rent space here and then spread the cost among our own services and the other users. And then this is also going to play a big role in enhancing capacity for the network of food hubs in the state, because as a network, storage is one of our bottlenecks. An example this looks like is when servicing schools, to be able to source food from small local farmers, but at a scale that the schools often need to be able to purchase. A key bottleneck is having freezer space. So beef is an example. If we want to buy local beef from farmers so that we can get patties into schools, by being able to store quantities of frozen beef so that we then aggregate a pallet's worth to be able to serve a school district that needs a certain amount. These kinds of facilities will enable that. And, similar to the Yellow Barn project that we just saw come online in Hardwick, having these regional nodes of storage where as food hubs, we can aggregate food, we can rent storage space from one another. It just expands all of that distribution capacity and ultimately supply chain security for local foods. And again, as I mentioned earlier, between the disruptions that we've all experienced with COVID to, just market pressures right now on the cost of food, the closer we facilitate these proximities between farmers and consumers, just the more we're building that resiliency for the long term, not to mention the, access for all of us living in the area and for the farmers. We need the farmers to keep doing what they're doing and for it to be viable for them at cost so that we can all ensure our food security for the long run. So this is, as I mentioned, the second phase of our expansion. And we ultimately just, to reiterate all of what these projects and the existence of our, campus right here in Rutland, we're creating jobs by strengthening and growing the food supply chain infrastructure in Rutland County. We're providing increased market access for farmers and producers. Farmers and our food producers are able to increase their year-round production to provide more local and nutritious food to area residents, restaurants, food businesses, institutions. It's enabling our ability to collaborate more with regional hubs so that we can also expand more to out-of-state markets. So that's, again, always helpful for farmers to have capacity to get on trucks that are going, outside of Vermont as well, just to increase their small business viability. And overall, this is enhancing more equitable access to our local food for everyone. That's the end of my slides. And I know I talk fast, so I'm happy to answer questions.
You did very well.
Thanks.
And also to get the flow of what's going on there is very, very helpful. And the pictures in there, you made it look like a really nice and warm environment inside of the building, and very, very helpful with that as well. Questions, committee?
What you're doing is outstanding. This is kind of like what they're doing up in Hardwick, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what
you two must collaborate quite a bit.
Yeah, we do.
Your trucks come down there.
Actually, John, we just scheduled a visit. John Ramsey's going to come down in early March. And we actually, as the Food Hub Collaborative, there's 6 of us that are currently sort of identifying as, established food hubs at a certain tenure of operating, that we have enough shared day-to-day operations as well as sort of vision of, future, where is this all going for us as a collaborative. So the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund and Farm to Plate is actually, they relaunched and are now providing support for us to meet monthly as the Vermont Food Hub Collaborative. So that includes, there's Brattleboro Food Connects, in Hardwick, there's CAE as well as Green Mountain Farm Direct, and they work in parallel. There's the Intervale Center in Burlington, and then there's Addison County Relocalization Network. So between that geographic reach, in Rutland, actually, interestingly, like Rutland and Bennington and along the Route 7 corridor there, we're sort of like the dead zone as far as where the other hubs reached and, which producers are getting left off of the trucks. And so, but Rutland, has been a great asset in, as we're building this infrastructure and coming online to work with the other hubs, because we're now really building that statewide connectivity, because Rutland to Bennington can now get access to the other groups. But as a collaborative, as I mentioned, we're both working on just logistical efficiencies day to day, as well as the larger vision of what is it that food hubs are doing and doing collectively that differentiates us from for-profit distributors, right? We have small for-profit distributors that just work in retail, more commercial spaces. We have regional distributors that some of our food hubs facilitate products from Vermont local sales to. And so there's this interesting balance of what is it about food hubs, like how are we operating differently, and then how does it affect farmers? And what some of those points are that farmers typically are getting a better price through food hubs, because that's one of our principles, is that paying the fair price to farmers comes first. We then have to make the prices work in terms of making them still affordable to the consumers, both from school institutions to sort of retail shops, and then also keeping all of our rates amongst ourselves affordable. So there's, every time a hub cross docks at another hub, there's typically a fee for holding that product and just supporting all of our capacity to do these operations. And what distinguishes food hubs is that we are able to bring philanthropic support to basically subsidize the actual cost of all of this distribution holding infrastructure, so that it's affordable to farmers. Farmers are getting a fair price first and foremost. And then the the products are made more accessible locally. It doesn't pencil out in the sort of larger economic model, right? Like we're essentially running parallel to for-profit businesses where farmers are getting typically lower cost and their other economic subsidies nationally impact, right, the cost of how local products can be priced. So between those factors, as well as how we can collaborate with one another to make distribution more efficient. So from a environmental and just both fuel cost and emissions perspective, the food hubs are able to work more together to do things that are more efficient from an environmental perspective than just market driven. And so as a collective, we talk a lot about how the importance of providing some capacity support to us as hubs would be of great benefit, because we then can continue to do what we're all doing, keeping things affordable for farmers, keeping our own costs manageable so that we're not passing that on to consumers or cutting it from farmers, as well as working more together so that we can just keep improving those efficiencies. So as I mentioned, we're grateful to the Sustainable Jobs Fund for supporting us all and having those conversations. And especially as, we're an example of one of the hubs that has been awarded these larger infrastructure grants. And some of the other hubs, all of them have to some degree as well. So I just think it's a really, wise and beneficial practice that we're all meeting, we're convening, we're sharing, logistics, best practices, lessons learned, so that all of that infrastructure investment can just be best leveraged and, operating for the longer term, the more sustainable each of our hubs are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heidi, welcome in. This committee, I think Linda might have been with us on that trip. We took a field trip at one point. It's probably 8 years ago now, maybe 6. When the greenhouse was first beginning to operate, I think the Kiwanis Club, or maybe it was Rotary. One of them kicked in Rotary, for that. And then I've spent a lot of time both at the summer one and the winter one. And are you still having about 50 or 60 vendors each week?
Yeah, the numbers dropped when, as they got, they were over at the Holiday Inn and they were over at the House Center.
They were.
Winter location. So that has proved we lost some vendors to that, just because of the displacement and because they also just were able to guarantee the income that they used to when things were, fully operating here. So right now they're hovering around 60, but I do know that it's, we're definitely in a build back mode where we've lost some vendors, just, transition again between COVID and then the, dislocation of where market has been. We're building back, and the farmers market had to increase their fees as well for vendors because they suffered financial losses from this whole remediation era. So, but I don't know if you've been back in here since we reopened, but
no, but I plan to. And again, for the benefit of the committee, the buildings that you saw are within easy walking distance of where the summer market is. They actually block the streets off, many of them, well, one of them, at least, Evelyn Street, downtown Rutland. And that's where they set up the outdoor market. So it's very easy to get to both places. And unfortunately, the hotel motel situation was part of it intersected with the farmers market because they had to set up in the hotel or the motel, and it just didn't work out very well. So anyway, continued luck and great success, and hopefully all the farmers are making money down there.
That's right. Yep, that's a goal. We want to keep everybody viable and connected, and we'd love to welcome you all down here once we, this spring when the thermal envelope and the interior renovations come further along. We'd love to show you all.
Yeah, we certainly have a lot going on, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time and appreciate.
And thank you for hanging in there. We just ran a little late today, and we appreciate your time very much.
Yes, no problem. It was good to hear from those are all, collaborators and, programs that we intersect with too. So it was great to get to listen.
A lot of those folks don't get a chance to get out there and, be able to say what they need to say. So to be able to hear them is very helpful to a new committee.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as John was saying too, just I concur completely that just Vermont is so unique in the amount of collaboration and partnerships that we all work on day to day. And I think that's why we saw, programs like Everyone Eats be as successful as they are, and why, our food hubs are all working together. So I definitely agree. We have such an asset in our social, capital network here in Vermont.
That is good to hear. Thanks, Heidi. Thank you, Heidi. Have a good day.
You too.
Linda Wukawa.